Penny is a government agent. Here is what the show actually gives you. Penny moves into apartment 4B directly across from two government-connected physicists. Immediately after Leonard and Sheldon's rocket fuel experiment, destroys the elevator and should have triggered a federal investigation. Nothing happened. No landlord, no fire marshal, no questions. She affords a Pasadena apartment on a Cheesecake Factory salary for years. She hacks their Wi-Fi and monitors internet activity. Shown on screen, played as a joke. She has no last name for 12 seasons. In espionage tradecraft, a missing surname means a classified file. She has no life outside this building. No acting friends visit. No Nebraska family drops by. Joyce Kim, Sheldon's girlfriend in Season 1, is revealed to be a North Korean spy who stole military secrets from Leonard, in on two high-value targets. One conveniently placed neighbor who never quite fits her cover story. If Penny was sent to watch them, what was she watching for? Because what those four men were building might be far more dangerous than anyone admits. The four nerds will accidentally end the world. The Big Bang Theory's opening credits run through the entire history of the universe, from the actual Big Bang through dinosaurs, evolution, civilization, and end on one single image. The four guys sitting in the apartment eating takeout. That is where the universe's timeline stops. Leonard, Sheldon, Howard, and Raj are the Einsteins and Teslas of their generation, except they have 21st century technology amplifying their genius. And instead of directing that genius toward physics, engineering, and aerospace, they spend their intellectual prime obsessing over comic books, video games, and relationship drama. The theory argues the universe's timeline ends with them because they are the ones who end it. Four of the most brilliant scientific minds of their era, completely distracted. Not malice, not ambition, just wasted potential at civilization-ending scale. The theme song told you how the universe ends. Now let's look at the man hiding the biggest secret in that apartment. Sheldon's shirts are a mood decoder. This one is confirmed by the show's own IMDb trivia page. Sheldon's graphic t-shirts are not random. The wardrobe department used the DC Comics emotional electromagnetic spectrum, the Green Lantern color system, to code his psychological state in every scene. Red equals rage. He wears red flash shirts in almost every confrontation, argument, or moment of high agitation. Green equals willpower. He wears Green Lantern shirts when enforcing the roommate agreement or asserting intellectual dominance. Blue equals hope and calm, his rare peaceful scenes. Yellow equals fear. The showrunners exclusively dressed Sheldon in DC Comics apparel for 12 seasons. Never Marvel, because Warner Brothers, which owns DC, distributed the show. But the color coding runs deeper than licensing. You can go back to any scene where Sheldon is at his most aggressive. Check his chest first. The shirt tells you everything before he opens his mouth. Sheldon's wardrobe was a language. His relationship with Leonard was something more complicated, held together by a debt neither of them ever fully acknowledged. By the way, if this kind of breakdown is what you're into, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. I do this every week. Thanks. Now back to it. The broken elevator was a psychological cage. The elevator broke in 2003, 4 years before the show begins, when Leonard and Howard's rocket fuel experiment went wrong. Sheldon pushed Leonard out, closed the doors, and let the rocket explode inside. He saved Leonard's life, confirmed in Season 3, Episode 22. Here is what no one talks about. Sheldon never once pushed the building to fix it. The man who files formal complaints about thermostat settings and bathroom schedules never filed a single complaint about a broken elevator he directly caused. Writer Steve Holland confirmed fixing the elevator was always planned as the series finale's emotional centerpiece. It fixed itself in Season 12, Episode 23, precisely when Sheldon was being forced to accept change for the first time. It stayed broken on purpose. Sheldon needed those stairs, and the stairs kept everyone in his orbit, forced together, slow, unable to escape without passing him. Sheldon kept them climbing stairs. Howard kept something far more disturbing hidden in the bedroom down the hall. Mrs. Wolowitz never existed. Howard Wolowitz is an MIT-trained aerospace engineer with a documented talent for voice impression, established in multiple episodes. His mother is heard in nearly every scene set at the Wolowitz house across 12 seasons. She is never once seen. Not a silhouette, not a hand, not a reflection. Howard was abandoned by his father at a young age, an event the show confirms destroyed him psychologically. The theory argues he suffered a complete psychological break, fabricating her voice using his engineering abilities to avoid processing the loss. This explains his desperate, humiliating pursuit of women in early seasons. A man completely isolated, maintaining a fiction to survive. When Carol Ann Suzy died in 2014, the show wrote her death into Season 8. Howard's collapse reads differently if you hold this theory. That wasn't grief for a living mother. That was the moment the last wall finally came down. Howard was hiding something in that house. Raj was hiding something inside himself, and the show buried it so effectively that most viewers never noticed it disappear. Raj never got better. He just gave up. Raj's selective mutism, his inability to speak to women without alcohol, is treated as a running gag for 6 seasons before it simply stops in Season 6. Episode 1. He speaks to Penny sober. The show moves on. No therapy, no breakthrough, no explanation. The theory argues this wasn't a cure, it was surrender. By Season 6, Raj had experienced repeated romantic rejection to such a degree that his anxiety didn't resolve. It flatlined. He stopped caring enough to be afraid. The selective mutism was triggered by the vulnerability of romantic possibility. Once Raj accepted, on some level, that he was going to be alone, the fear had nothing left to protect. The show frames this as character growth. Watch his face in those later episodes when he talks to women. There's no relief there. There is no triumph. There is nothing. Raj faded out. Bernadette quietly became something else entirely, and the evidence for what she became has been hiding in plain sight since Season 4. Bernadette is the show's most dangerous character. Bernadette Rostenkowski is introduced in Season 3 as a sweet, soft-spoken microbiologist who waitresses alongside Penny. By Season 6, she is a pharmaceutical executive who controls Howard's every major life decision and delivers cruelty with a smile that never quite reaches her eyes. The show frames this as character development. The evidence frames it differently. She works with deadly pathogens and references this casually, including a Season 7 scene where she describes potentially weaponizable microbes with audible fondness. She manipulates Howard into space, into fatherhood, and into career changes without him registering any of it as pressure. Her voice, high, sweet, almost childlike, is the precise register that disarms people before the control begins. And she was specifically written to share vocal qualities with Mrs. WOLOWITZ. Howard replaced one controlling maternal figure with another. The show played this for laughs. Bernadette was never a joke. Bernadette controlled Howard openly. The theory about Leonard is that his control was invisible, and far more damaging. Leonard is the show's most toxic character. Leonard Hofstadter is framed as the audience surrogate, the relatable, lovable center of the show. The evidence does not support this. He pursues Penny from the moment she moves in, before she has given him a single signal of interest, and the show treats 12 years of persistence as romantic. He uses emotional pressure disguised as vulnerability, his childhood trauma, his mother's coldness, as leverage in arguments. He accepts a North Sea research position without telling Penny. He confesses to kissing another woman on that trip, not out of guilt, but because confession was safer than being caught. He ridicules Penny's intelligence in ways the laugh track smooths over. He frames his own insecurities as Penny's responsibility to manage. Then Penny's wine consumption tracks almost precisely with her years inside Leonard's emotional orbit. The show called him the hero. The writing called him something else. Leonard was the show's hidden antagonist. The show's hidden protagonist was someone the writers almost wrote out entirely. Amy Farrah Fowler is the true protagonist. Amy Farrah Fowler enters in the Season 3 finale as a joke, a female Sheldon, introduced and discarded. By Season 10, she has won the Nobel Prize and delivered a speech that emotionally resolves 12 seasons of character development. Track her arc against every other character. Penny stops growing professionally after Season 4. Leonard's emotional patterns never fundamentally shift. Howard's maturity arc plateaus after the space mission. Amy is the only character who changes at a structural level, from someone with zero capacity for human connection to someone who understands it well enough to reach Sheldon Cooper. The Nobel Prize is technically Sheldon's, but watch his speech. He thanks Amy last. He calls her his more important discovery. The show's title belongs to 4 men. Its emotional architecture was built entirely around one woman who arrived in the 3rd season finale and quietly became its center. Amy was the real protagonist. The show's real thesis, what it was actually arguing for 12 years, was hidden somewhere most viewers never thought to look. The show secretly punished intelligence and rewarded conformity. Look at what the show actually rewards across 12 seasons. Sheldon's genius brings him social isolation, ridicule, and a Nobel Prize he almost doesn't accept because it requires him to change. Leonard's intellect earns him consistent insecurity and a relationship he spends a decade feeling unworthy of. Raj's academic achievements are background noise behind his romantic failure. Howard, no PhD, engineer rather than theorist, goes to space, marries first, has children first, and demonstrates the most consistent emotional development. Penny abandons her acting dream, takes a pharmaceutical sales job she never chose, and is rewarded with marital stability and a pregnancy. The characters who compromise most are consistently shown as happiest. The show presented itself as a celebration of nerd culture. Its actual thesis is that genius is a burden, and the best thing a brilliant person can do is learn to be ordinary. The show punished its smartest characters for being smart. It also buried one of the most specific pieces of foreshadowing in television history inside a throwaway Season 3 joke. Every Sheldon quirk was foreshadowing the Nobel Prize. In Season 3, a child prodigy named Dennis Kim tells Sheldon his string theory research is a dead end. Sheldon dismisses him completely. By Season 11, he has abandoned string theory and pivoted to superasymmetry, the exact pivot that wins him the Nobel in Season 12. In Season 1, Sheldon tells Leonard he would consult his future wife before any major financial decision, and immediately turns to ask Amy, who has not yet entered the show. The psychic Penny takes Sheldon to in Season 5 tells him his work will fall into place once he fully gives himself to Amy. Their joint Nobel results directly from their marriage. UCLA physicist David Saltzberg, who consulted on the show's science for its entire run, confirmed the scientific content was always handled with real accuracy. The foreshadowing wasn't accidental. The Nobel ending was planned from early in the series. The Nobel was always coming. The roommate agreement that governed Sheldon's entire life was never what it appeared to be either. The roommate agreement is Sheldon's psychological survival mechanism. The roommate agreement is played as absurdist comedy, a comically long legal document covering sneeze etiquette, bathroom schedules, and temperature settings. Read it differently. Sheldon Cooper is a man with profound attachment disorder. His father died before they resolved their relationship. His childhood involved repeated social rejection and isolation. The roommate agreement is not a control document. It is a security architecture. By codifying every possible social interaction into a written agreement, Sheldon eliminates the uncertainty that causes him genuine psychological distress. He cannot control whether people will stay or leave, but if there is a signed agreement, departing requires a formal breach, and that gives him just enough structural safety to let someone close. The show treated it as a punchline for 12 seasons. What it actually was is a portrait of a man doing the most with the emotional tools he had. The roommate agreement was Sheldon's armor. The show's entire universe contained an armor of its own, one that only young Sheldon's existence cracked open. Young Sheldon is adult Sheldon's unreliable memoir. Young Sheldon is narrated by Jim Parsons, adult Sheldon's voice, reading from a written memoir compiled after winning the Nobel Prize. In Season 1's finale, adult Sheldon explicitly tells the audience he is writing his life story. This explains every continuity error between the two shows. In TBBT, Sheldon says he was a complete loner. Young Sheldon introduces Tam Nguyen as his best friend. In TBBT, George Sr. is an angry alcoholic. In Young Sheldon, he is a loving, flawed father. In TBBT, Sheldon's childhood home is aluminum on cinder blocks. Young Sheldon shows a standard suburban house. These are not writing errors. They are memoir distortions. The younger Sheldon, still grieving and not yet emotionally developed, told a harsher story. The older Sheldon, while having loved Amy and raised children, wrote the truthful one. Young Sheldon is the corrected version. TBBT was always the wound. Adult Sheldon rewrote his past with more compassion. What he could never rewrite was what the show was doing with Penny's story in real time, and it is darker than anyone wants to admit. Penny is a sociologist running a live experiment. The CIA spy theory has the right instinct but the wrong conclusion. The grounded version. Penny is a PhD candidate in sociology running a long-term field study on high IQ individuals with arrested social development. She cannot afford that apartment on a waitress salary. She moves in anyway, directly next to Caltech physicists. Rather than avoiding her unusual neighbors, she methodically inserts herself into their daily routines. She introduces Bernadette to Howard. She initiates Amy's introduction to Sheldon. She introduces chaotic variables, relationships, social invitations, emotional disruptions, then sits back on the couch with wine and watches how the subjects respond. Her apparent lack of intellectual engagement is a calculated control variable. But her final career pivot to pharmaceutical sales, a field built on studying human behavioral responses to chemical stimuli, is the logical endpoint of a sociologist who spent 12 years in the field. Penny may have been studying them. The show may have been studying all of us. Soft Kitty is built on stolen intellectual property. Soft Kitty is Sheldon's ultimate comfort mechanism. The song Mary Cooper sings when he is ill, and the one he demands from anyone who must comfort him throughout the series. In 2015, the daughters of Edith Newlin, a New Hampshire nursery school teacher who composed the English lyrics in the 1930s, filed a federal lawsuit against CBS and Warner Brothers, claiming the song was used without licensing or compensation. The lawsuit was settled out of court. Here's the irony the show never addressed. Sheldon Cooper, a man who has cited copyright law in arguments, enforced intellectual property protections on whiteboards, and filed formal objections over academic attribution, built his entire emotional safety net around a song his own production company was using without proper authorization. The one thing that made Sheldon feel safe was something taken from someone else without permission. The song was stolen. The science, however, was real and occasionally prophetic. The show's science actually predicted real breakthroughs. UCLA physics professor David Saltzberg served as the show's scientific consultant for its entire 12-season run. Every whiteboard equation, every scientific reference, Every physics joke reviewed for accuracy before filming. This is documented fact. The show featured superasymmetry, Sheldon and Amy's eventual Nobel-winning theory, before the concept appeared in real-world physics literature. In Season 3, the guys referenced topological insulators in a throwaway gag, a field that would win the actual Nobel Prize in Physics in 2016. Howard's work on guidance systems for satellites mirrors real trajectory mechanics used in ISS missions. The show is mocked for making scientists look socially incompetent. It is less often credited for making real physics accessible to 15 million weekly viewers who were, often without knowing it, learning actual science. Salzburg's whiteboards were a classroom with a laugh track. The science was real. What Wil Wheaton was doing every time he appeared on that show was something else entirely. Wil Wheaton's house number is the show's deepest Easter egg. Wil Wheaton plays a fictionalized villain version of himself across multiple seasons, Sheldon's recurring nemesis. His house number in the show is 1701. The USS Enterprise in Star Trek The Next Generation, the show where Wheaton played Wesley Crusher, is registered NCC 1701D. The wardrobe department used the DC Comics color spectrum to encode Sheldon's psychology. The prop department gave a recurring character a house number that only Star Trek fans would decode. Amy's apartment number is 314, pi to 2 decimal places. Amy FARRAH Fowler, the neuroscientist, lives at pi. The show's production team was running a second layer of communication beneath the surface of the sitcom the entire time. A hidden frequency aimed specifically at the obsessive viewer who paid close enough attention. The elevator was a symbol. Sheldon's shirts were a code. Wheaton's front door was a handshake. The house number was a gift for obsessive viewers. The next theory is a gift for anyone who ever thought Howard was just comic relief. Howard didn't marry Bernadette. He rebuilt his mother. Howard Wolowitz's mother is loud, controlling, physically overwhelming, emotionally demanding, and structurally central to his domestic existence. Bernadette Rostenkowski is introduced as warm and gentle. By Season 5, she is loud in specific registers, controlling in every domestic and professional decision, and structurally central to Howard's existence in ways he never consciously chose. The show confirmed this connection through an explicit audio choice. Bernadette's voice was written to share qualities with Mrs. Wolowitz's. High-pitched, carrying, impossible to ignore. Howard's psychology, shaped by abandonment and an overbearing substitute parent, did not seek love when it found Bernadette. It sought familiarity. In the most significant relationship of his adult life is a subconscious reconstruction of the only model of love he ever knew. Howard thought he escaped his mother's house. He rebuilt it at a different address and called it happiness. Howard rebuilt his mother. Leonard rebuilt his, and the evidence for it runs across 12 seasons of scenes everyone laughed at and nobody examined. Beverly Hofstadter ran a lifelong psychological experiment on Leonard. Beverly Hofstadter is a psychiatrist and neuroscientist who has published extensively on childhood development. She withheld physical affection from Leonard throughout his childhood, documented in multiple episodes. She referred to him by his full name in clinical context. She documented his developmental milestones in research papers without his knowledge or consent. She demonstrates an immediate warm connection with Sheldon, the most clinically interesting subject in Leonard's environment. The theory argues Beverly deliberately structured Leonard's childhood as a controlled environment to study the effects of emotional deprivation on a high IQ subject. Leonard's adult patterns, seeking validation from emotionally unavailable women, confusing persistence with love, interpreting Penny's occasional warmth as profound intimacy, are the precise behavioral outputs of Beverly's methodology. She didn't raise a son, she ran a longitudinal study, and it published. Beverly studied Leonard. The entire show may have been studying itself, and the darkest theory of all is the one that rewrites every single scene you have ever watched. Sheldon was never arrogant. He was the loneliest person in every room. Sheldon Cooper tells you who he is in the pilot. His functional sociability is a performance. Human interaction follows patterns he has memorized, not instincts he has ever felt. He has never experienced the world the way everyone around him does. His arrogance is the only available armor. If he is the smartest person in the room, his inability to connect is a choice rather than a limitation. He builds a roommate agreement because without it, he has no guarantee anyone stays. He finds a spot on the couch and never moves because it is the one permanent thing in a world he cannot predict. His Nobel speech is the only time in 12 seasons he thanks the people around him for not leaving, not as a genius, and as someone terrified that brilliance was all he had, and discovered at the very end, it was never what anyone was staying for. 20 theories. Every one of them built from scenes you already watched. The show never hid any of this. It just trusted you to look. The elevator was always going to open. Sheldon was always going to say thank you. The only question that remains, and the show never answered it, is whether Penny was there because she chose to be, or because someone sent her. Go back to Season 1. The answer is in the first scene she is ever in. And this time, Watch her eyes.